Hi everyone, there have been a few requests in the community to see a deeper dive and a closer walkthrough of Silver Efex Pro 2, and so I thought I'd take the time and record just a sample of editing this image here. I've already opened it up in Lightroom and done my basic corrections that come right out of the camera, right? So I've already leveled the photo, I have made some distortion corrections, and I've gone ahead and opened it up over here in Photoshop where I've also sharpened it just a little bit. Now, I think a lot of times when you think about going and turning a photo into black and white, part of the inclination and the reason you want to do that is because it looks kind of washed out and boring and flat. Like you can see, this is a very flat image as it is. And I think our first inclination is often just to go straight to black and white. I think that's a mistake most of the time, and I'll show you why. But you'll notice I have a different version of this image loaded as well. So I have one that I've already corrected and made very vibrant, filled with enough color that you can actually tell that there's an ocean there and that the sky is blue and that the grass is green. And I want to show you the difference you see in the two of these based on where you do that conversion. So we'll start with this plain, boring, flat one. And I'm going to come over here and just launch Silver Efex Pro right on this layer. So we'll see it's going to load this up. Hopefully it's not going to take too terribly long. There we go. And you'll see we've come in here and it's done the straight conversion for us. And of course we can go and we can, pick a different template for it. It's not quite as bad if we put it right there in the high structured one. But if we come over here and we look at the histogram, you're going to see it's still pretty flat through the center. We don't have anything at either end of this. And so when we look at these zones, we can already tell that there's going to be some areas where we're going to have to do a bit of work to get it in here and get what we want out of it. Now, if I cancel this and come in and instead select my nice colorful layer and have it open up Silver Efex for that layer and that conversion, you should see a bit of difference down in the histogram, and it's going to save us some time. Already you can see that the castle itself, even with that default preset, has a lot more of the texture and the structure that we would want in there. If we put it in the histogram mode, you'll see there's still some work to do. It's still a little flat in the center, but I think because it's stronger, that as soon as I put it into the high structure look that I want, see how much more has automatically popped in with it. And a lot of that's just because we already did the work to bring out the dimensions in the sky and to bring out the vividness in it before we put it in here. So it's worth taking a couple of minutes to either make those changes in Camera Raw or to open them up in Vivisa or do it in the develop tools in Lightroom before you bring it over. It'll make your time in Silver Efex Pro go quicker and be more effective. So here at this point with the image, I like the structure, high structure preset for a lot of castle type images because I love the grittiness of it. But we can go ahead and look at a few of these others and see if there's one that we like better. Like here's the smoother version of that. So if we don't want the sky to pop, that would be a good choice. Some of the favorite ones that you see people using here, here's a full contrast in structure. So that gives us a bit more of an HDR-like look. I think you have to be really careful with it though, because you'll notice it's already put that little glow right around the edges of our building. And I personally hate having to spend the time to clean the glow out later, so I'd rather just avoid it. So let's go back up here and let's stick with the one I like to start with this high structure one. And maybe that's a little too much. We can look at all of them, see what I've skipped. Those are my favorites over there that we were looking at. We know we don't want these high contrast ones because it's going to put our castle into silhouette. Here's a harsh high structure one. That's what we were already in. High key would kind of give it an interesting look. Depending on the use, we might go for that if we wanted to try and elegate it up a little bit. You'll notice some of these have little yellow stars, so all these with little yellow stars are ones that I have said are my favorites. And so if I wanted to add this inverse to it, I would just click the little yellow star right there, and then it would show up over in my favorites. And that's where I spend most of my time, because I do like those an awful lot compared to some of the others. So let's come back here to high structure harsh, and I am done with the presets for right now. I'm going to hide that, make it go away so I can just focus on working with my image. Over here in your adjustment panel, this is a lot like Lightroom in the sense that I recommend you start at the top and work your way down. Now, as you're doing that, you always have the option to compare what you have to where you were. So if we hit compare, and we can actually turn on this little line. So the middle one here gives you the line. You'll notice as you slide it back and forth that, you know, on the one side we have the default look as soon as it came in here. On the other side we are getting the look with that preset applied. You also have the ability to kind of do a side-by-side split if you want to. I really like the split preview, and a lot of times I'll do it like this just so I can grab it really quick and bring it back across. Up here in the global adjustments is where we're going to do a lot of our work. One of the little keyboard shortcuts, though, it's kind of good to get to know right away, is the space bar. So if you hit space bar, you see how immediately it zooms into 100%, and then hit it again and it pops back out. So if I want to come in and get a good look and see that, oh, I got a good bit of glow here, that might be an indicator to me that I've chosen the wrong preset. I could try and wiggle it out back over here, but I think it's just going to be easier to go back, and if I go with the smooth version, you can see it takes that glow down a good bit. Fine art rarely has any kind of glow with it. It's always a very kind of smooth, high class one. So that one works. So let's go with the fine art. And because I really wanted to get a lot more of that grit out of the castle, I'm going to add that using control points. But first we'll look and expand. So in global adjustments, go ahead and expand your brightness and contrast and structure. And when you go in here, you'll see that if we were to take structure and just slide the whole thing across, it's applied all around the image, and you'll see because it's doing that, we're getting that glow right back that we didn't want, right? So we can come down here, we can double click to zero it out, and instead we can decide to only apply the structure in the mid-tone, shadow, or highlight area, or we can go with what they call fine structure, which is a more limited range, so it's not going to make things go as extreme one way or the other. So with this, let's try to bump up the midtones just a little bit, and I'm staying zoomed in so I can kind of see as soon as that little glow starts to come. So you can see right there it's already coming back, so we know that 40 is too high, but it looks like it's probably okay right around 20. I don't think that's too well, there's a little bit there. Let's do that. And it might be that from a highlight standpoint we actually want to turn the highlight structure down a little bit. There we go. Now we can zoom out, and I think I'm happy with how the structure is. We might look and decide we want to get a little bit more contrast. A lot of times you want to control that just by controlling your blacks and whites instead of the overall contrast. And so in this instance I want a little more pop in my sky, and so if I amplify the whites just a little bit, you'll see how that'll start to come in. And we'll zoom in again and make sure we still aren't getting glowy around the castle. So we'll make a little bit more pop there. We can amplify the blacks a little bit as well. I don't want to do too much because we'll start to lose detail in it. Now, I think I have this top area kind of where I want it. But before I go any further, I want to jump down to the loop and histogram area. If you're in loop, go ahead and switch over to histogram and look at how the zones are breaking down. When you click on one of these areas, it will highlight the parts of the image that are in that color zone. And so here in the very darkest areas, what would be ink if we printed it without any detail, you see we have just a little bit here in the shadows, which I think is about perfect because you wouldn't expect to see the detail in those areas, and it gives your eye a nice reference point to know where pure black is. On the other end of the spectrum, all this area that's white, it's got the stripes, is an area that wouldn't print at all. It would just be paper. And you don't usually want too much of that. So it's a sign that I might have gone just a little bit too far amplifying my whites. I might want to back those down a little bit. And it might be that rather than back them down everywhere, because I like the way they look over on the right side of this image, that this might be a good time to go ahead and use a control point. So control points let you affect the image in a small area, a lot the way you would with a brush inside of Lightroom. And so if I take a control point and drop it right over here in this area, and I'm going to go ahead, this top slider, it's like a handle to control the size. So I'm going to go ahead and make it big enough that it's getting all of the area where I've got those stripes showing up. And you'll see this little drop down arrow. When I hit that, it expands so that we have all of the same options here that we have above. And this amplify whites feature is what's probably causing my issue. So I'm going to take amplify whites and I'm going to pull it down. Well, it's helped a little, but not much. We might also have to pull our brightness back in this area. Oh, there, look at that. So we'll take that down. Now I think we have a nice balance of color here and here. And you can see it looks like I might have missed a sensor spot. So there's exactly why you're supposed to clean them up before you come in here, because it's going to be harder to get rid of now. So we've got my control point. I'm happy with that one. If I had multiple control points, I could group them together just like you can in any of the other Nik tools. I think this control point is going to live on its own. Where I might want to add more is to add a little bit more grit and structure into this castle itself. So I've come down here, I'm happy with my zeros, I'm happy with my 10s. I can see it just coming in as we go across. Let me make sure that nothing's too heavy here. I think everything's about where I want it. It's this area of 3 and 4 where I want to kind of bump that up a bit. And because 3 and 4 are in the castle, I think a control point is going to be a great way to do it. So I'm going to grab another control point and just drop it on there. And excuse me. And the first thing I want to do with this is you'll see I've got a fine structure and a normal structure. And so you can start with either one you want to. Let's zoom in so we can see it a little better. If we take fine structure and we crank that up, you're not going to see a whole lot of impact on the histogram itself. But you can see as we're going across how we're getting more of that black. So we're bringing a little bit more down here. You can see this area has bumped up a little bit. If we go to our big structure and change it, we get more, like it would happen a lot faster. You see how the yellow grows much quicker. So let's put that there. We've got our structure. I think we might want a little bit more white in this area just to kind of add some of the pop. But now you can see we've managed to lift that area a little bit. It's never going to be up as high. There's not going to be a hump in the middle like a camel there, but I think we've done a pretty decent job with that. So I'm going to zoom back out so I can see where I'm putting my control points. I'm going to copy and paste this. So you can copy it over here by hitting this button, but really use the same shortcut you would use inside Word. So that's Command C, Command V, and as soon as we hit Command V, you can see it down there. Now here's another trick. If we switch over to loop mode, when you're watching down there as you move this, you can actually tell right where you're going to end up dropping this. So you can see the little plus down in the bottom, and that can make a difference on the range of the photo that's impacted. So I usually try to give it a look, and you make sure, like in this instance, I wanted to drop it on the wall, not in the gap in the window there, right? So copy that. Let's put another copy of it over here. Maybe this one needs to be a little smaller because we don't want it to. I don't want to get too far off the castle itself. I want to keep this to be applied really in that area. There we go. So I think we have a good bit of coverage now with this. If we want to check on it, of course, we can bring our little bar across, and we can see just the difference there in how much of that castle is standing out. I think I'm happy with all of those. I'm going to go ahead and select all of those control points. And so I'm going to go up and get the first one, and then I'm going to hold down shift and jump down to the last one. So these are all the ones that are here in the castle area. And I think control point 1, yeah, control point 1 was up there. We didn't want it, so there we go. 2 through 9. And if we hit this button, it's going to duplicate all of them, but if we hit this one, it'll group them. And I think you can also just hit Command G. So Command G creates a group. If you want to click on it, you can actually give it a can you give it a name? I thought you could, maybe not. So anyway, you've got your control point. We have managed to get the high structure look I wanted for the castle without having to go with the entire preset that was going to make the edges of the castle have that nasty white line in it. Now, looking at this, I have mixed feelings about the grass. I'm not sure if I really want the grass to be quite as bright and fuzzy as it is, so I might decide to drop a control point down here and turn my whites down a little bit. And I might also decide that I want to turn my overall structure down a little bit. I don't want it to distract. I kind of want it to be a smoother area. I'll leave the fine structure kind of where it is. But if we take this, drop it in there, and if you're watching over in the loop and histogram window, you can see a little clearer. Here, we'll zoom in and get down to it so you can see as we go. Come on, there we go. I'm going to copy that again, and I'm going to click and paste it. So watch as soon as we put it in there. You can see kind of the color shift happen as it goes across. It's taking some of the sharpness, some of that clarity by having the reduced structure out of the grass, and it's just going to keep it from being quite as much in the foreground. And so I'm going to drop a couple more of those in. There we go. Now I think it's a little more balanced. I don't want anything to compete with Manor Greyjoy there in the background. Okay, so now we've taken care of our basic global adjustments. We have taken care of our selective adjustments using those control points. In fact, it's a good practice to go in and go ahead and group everything, even though I don't think I'm going to have to come back to it. We'll go ahead and we'll do that to group those together as well. So if I do want to make a change, I can make it universally to them. So if I change my mind and decided I wanted to put the structure back in for all of the grass, I could just drag it on the one control point, and you'll see it's impacting all of them, so because they're all being changed together. So we'll put it back down here. Now let's talk about the color filter area. This gets back to a little bit of what I was talking about before we jumped in here with the edit. You'll notice that out in Photoshop, and can we jump back out here? Probably not, because it's open as a plugin for a minute. In Photoshop, if you remember, I had the flat image that was kind of washed out, and then instead, when I moved into here, I used the one that I made very vivid, that had the very bright blue sky and the bright green grass. One of the benefits of doing that before I got in here is that it means I can get a little more impact out of my color filters. Because while what we're seeing in this image is all black and white now, behind the scenes, Silver Efex is still completely aware of every bit of color that was in the shot that we took. And what happens now if we use these color filters is that it's going to act just like it would if you took a camera, loaded it with black and white film, and then put one of these colored filters on your lens. So essentially, what each of these filters will do is it will brighten up the color of the filter itself, and it will subsequently darken the opposite end of the color spectrum. So I made the sky is all very blue, so if I select the blue filter, we should see the sky brighten up a little, and we should see the building itself kind of pull back just a touch. So let me see if I'm right. We apply this. Yeah, did you see that happen? So anytime you want to take one of these filters off, you jump back down here, the first one, that's your neutral one. So here's the neutral look. Now, as soon as we put the blue, You see how it's brightened up the sky, and because it made the blue brighter, you don't have as much of a contrast between the clouds and the blue itself. So if we wanted to make the sky go away, this would be a great choice. But that's not what I want. Now, if we go to the opposite end here, if I hit the red, then what we'll see that red do is, you see how I put more contrast into the sky and I put a little bit more contrast into the castle. So if we take that off and we'll throw it on again, you can see how that impact happened. If we wanted to use the green one, the grass is where we would see the grass lighten up, and it would kind of draw more attention away. So you can go and you can try each of these, and in fact, if you decide you don't like any of these, you'll notice, and if you don't see, you might see this details area. You expand details, and you'll notice you have the ability to use the slider and pick a filter anywhere you want in the color spectrum. So if I decide I want to come over and I want to have the purple filter, which is a lot like the blue, you'll see how that impacts it. So you can just kind of slide around until you find the one you think you like. And I know for this image that really reds and yellows are where we want to be, so I'm going to leave it here on the red. But we still have the ability to change the strength of that. So if we take the strength, so instead of at 66, let's crank it up to 200, and you can see that gets a very kind of dark, moody, more impactful look at this. It also makes that spot I didn't clear out show up way better than I'd like it to. If we go the other direction, if we move it down to 7, you can barely tell that anything's happened to it at all. So I think for this, so I think 60 was the default. Let's go up to about 80. I want a little more oomph than it had on its own, but not that much, right? So now we have taken this, and I think it's done a lot to kind of make it our own, right? We're no longer living in that generic preset mode. We've done things to kind of own this, to emphasize the areas of the photo that we want to draw attention to downplay and de-emphasize a little bit some of the areas that we don't want to distract from it. So we've added a lot of control to that. Let's go ahead, put away our color filter, and we've worked our way down to film types. Now, by default, it's always going to come in here for neutral. If you ever spend any time over in a film forum or hanging out with some old darkroom junkies, you might hear some rip-roaring debates about the best film to use to go and shoot those analog photos with. And it's because film really does have unique characteristics to it, right? With film, you had all that crazy stuff going on that we've kind of taken for granted now, where everything had to be the same speed. But you also had things like the toning and the tinting of the image that would be different. You'd have different amounts of grain. And so what they've done with Silver Efex, if they've taken about the 15 or 18 most popular film types out there and put them in here as presets. And so by default, we're on neutral, but if we happen to know that we love the look of the Agfa 400, we could jump down to it. You could go down to this Neopan Pro, and you can see, just look at the sky, you can see all of the grain that comes in there. So here, let me, I want to get this where you can really see that. The sky's a great place to see the differences in grain. So if we are here in our ISO 3200 films, we're going to have a bit more grain. There you can see it's a lot lighter, but look how gritty it is. You can also see it's making some big impacts on our castle. So we can go through, decide if there's any of these we want. I want to get down here a little bit so we can see the castle as I make a choice. You can also see that this particular choice did a little bit more to the edges. Let me stick with... let's stick here with the Panatomic X, right? It's kind of a neutral one. When we look at this, you'll see that it has, by default, got some characteristics that came with it, including how much grain you get per pixel and how soft or hard that grain is. So if we zoom back in, and you'll see here at 465, let's go to the other end of the spectrum. And if we say our grain is only going to be 59, well, look at that. It's like somebody took a piece of sandpaper to our image. Now, there are some instances where that could be really cool, especially if you're trying to take photos and make them look old and dated, or make them have that kind of a nostalgic old-timiness to it. If we go to the other end of the spectrum, 500, you'll see that there's not nearly as much grain. The same thing happens with softness, so 500 and all the way at the end of soft. It's about where we are right now. If we go over to hard, in fact here, let's drop it back down in the middle so we can see the soft and hard a little better. So here's the hard one. On the soft end, it's really, it's almost a finer grain of sandpaper, if that makes sense. So it all comes down to your preferences. You also have the ability, of course, to change the sensitivity. So this is very similar to what was going on with the filters above. So this is what the sensitivity of this particular film typically was. And so if our blues are normally at 41%, if we brought them down to the negative range, would we see the impact there? Yes, see how much darker the sky gets? And if we have them way up here at 100%, the sky should get very light. So you have a lot of control over how this is processed, and a lot of that, you'll notice, is surprisingly based on the color that was in that image, which is why you want to make sure you get everything you can out of it before you come into Silver Efex. You also have the ability with any of these films to also adjust what the default level and kind of curves adjustment would be for that. So I think I'm fairly happy with this image as it is right now. And so I'm going to go ahead, we'll put away film types, we've put away selective adjustments. This gets us down into the land of finishing adjustments. Again, we have a number of presets that we can use. If you are a fan of old sepia looks, we have a number of those different presets that are built in. And some people really like that. Some people like to go a little bit more warm. So it depends if you're going for more of a seasonal look. This could be a nice kind of impact and effect for you. Sometimes I really like the blue ones, especially for an image like this. But most of mine, because I am a nice conservative boring photo type, ends up in the selenium or the neutral range. That's just where I tend to spend most of my time. You do have a couple of split tones in there as well. I'm not a big fan of either one of those. I'm going to leave this in neutral right now. If we want to change it a little bit, we can change the hue of the silver here. So if we wanted to go a little bit different and add a bit more to it, we can. And you can see it's almost getting yellower as we go, if that makes sense. But let's stay in neutral land. You can change your balance for that, of course. The paper, if you're trying to emulate the look of printing this on a particular paper type, you could. I personally never really change anything there. I do sometimes use the vignetting. If you have done everything that you needed to do before, like to clean up this image before you've come into Silver Efex, I do think they have some nice vignettes that are built in. And really they have both vignettes and burnt edges. So one's more framing and one's more typical vignetting. So you'll see you've got your presets for different kinds of lens fall off that you can put in there, and you have both in white and black, and it depends on the image whether or not which way you want to go with that. I think the black is a little too heavy in this, but you can make an argument that the white with this one just kind of helps pull your eye into the center to the darker area where the castle is. So the white's something I might actually embrace here. So we could pick that if we want to there. We also have the ability to change the size. So right now it's very much a rectangle. If we go down to the circle edge end here, you'll see how it gets rounder. And if we make the size different, so let me... As you change the size, it's a little more evident what shape it is. I think it's hard to tell with the whites on this one, but If you've got a more dramatic vignette, you're going to be able to see a little better. If we go here, let's go to our lens fall off too. There we go. So right now it's in a circle. If we come over here, and we'll make the fall off amount be more, and we can make the size be kind of small, and then you can see that being able to place your center right where you want it. So we might not want it dead center. This is actually kind of more the center of where the feature of the castle itself is. We could go and click it in there. So in some images it's going to make a bigger difference than in others. Burning the edges is kind of similar to vignetting. So let me take all of the vignettes off so we have kind of the fresh look here. You'll see again we have a number of presets, and your presets really are all going to be focusing on all of the edges themselves. So you can make it soft, and let me turn off these little clicks down here, because you're always going to get a lot of the 0s and 10s when you're dealing with these vignettes and edges. I sometimes really like Ologist Soft 2. It's just kind of a subtle one that comes in a little more. But for this one, we'll go Soft 1. And you have the ability to change how it's impacted at each of these edges. So we've set it for all edges, but now you'll notice that because this is just at the left edge, that's all we're actually adjusting. So we could change the strength, and you'll see the left edge now is getting kind of much more greasy looking from where it's gotten a lot stronger. You can also adjust the transition there. So if we set the transition up high and the strength high, so you'll see that it just kind of takes it further in. If we wanted to get rid of transition, you'll see that it would be more of just the edge of it that gets burnt. So we also have to take size down a little bit there. So if you want to, you can control this from multiple angles, depending on your ultimate angle. There's some interesting things you could do with that, especially if you got an image and you're trying to burn one edge to make it black because it's going to go and get composited in with something that's fully black for, say, a Christmas card or something. It gives you a little bit more ability to work with that. And then, even more in the border category are the actual borders, and you'll see that there are no shortage of borders to choose from. I don't tend to use these very often, and it's simply because when you do use them, it's very obvious that you have. Now, the exception to that might be here, this Type 14, which really just makes it look like it's got a nice clean print edge on it. So if you're printing at home, I could see some benefit to using this one. It just kind of gives it a bit of professionalism. The same thing with the black one. But then you get into some of these artsier ones. So the Type 12, there's nothing wrong with it, but it looks like you've popped it through, say, a phone filter pack. And if you're going for that for like a quick share on Facebook or something, go for it. Personally, I think it's a little bit much for something you're going to work on in your portfolio. So for a lot of these, I would say use the borders very sparingly. The more time you spend in Silver Efex with these borders, I kind of like that one, the more you'll start noticing when people do use them out there. So it's just kind of like, that's what they did. It's something you just always know. So I'm not going to put one on right now. Well, maybe we will. Why not? Let's go put on this nice clean white one. And of course we can change the size here. So the default's 000. If we wanted to make it bigger, we can make it bigger. So if you were printing this out and you wanted to make sure you had room to sign it and number it, then you might want to make it bigger than what it was by default. You can also change how much it spreads out and whether or not it's rough or clean around the edges. Now with this one, I don't think you get a big difference in the rough or clean. With some of them you do. Now I'm trying to decide what I might have failed to show you. So let's see, there are a couple of other things we can look at. We saw the presets here. if we decided that we really didn't like something we did and we wanted to go back without having to reset and start over, we can go here into the history, and you'll see the initial state where we came in. It came in on neutral. In fact, we can go back to original image. Can we do that? No. We can go back to here, neutral. You can go to anywhere you need to along the line. You'll see it immediately kind of jumps you back to it. I actually liked where we were, so let me jump all the way to the end. And it's going to go through and apply every one of those, but it'll also let you see what the different settings were, which can be good if you want to be able to save these and come back and use them again. So history can be very useful. Import is really only helpful if you've gone out and imported other presets from other areas. Go into custom. We could actually, since I like what I've done here, if I wanted to, I could say this is Jennifer's castle preset, and it'll save that so that I can come back and use it next time. And in fact, I can click the little yellow star and it will be in my favorites. So if I go back to my preset library, favorites, now you see has 7. And the bottom one, hey, it's the one we're on, the castle preset, complete with image borders. But don't worry, you can always take them off later. So we'll hide this again. We covered the spacebar for zooming in and out. Something we didn't talk about is sometimes it's nice to be able to lock in where you are in the loop, especially when you're working with control points. And to do that, I believe it's a right click on a PC and yes, and a double click on a Mac. So you'll see now I'm moving around, but it's staying where it was down here. And if you look, you'll notice that that little push pin has been turned. And it's just because I did a double click. If I double click again, you'll notice that it's back to moving around and that the push pin is not turned. So if you're working with control points in particular in a certain area and you want to lock it in so that you can go over and make some adjustments on the side without losing your space here or without losing your space down here in the loop and histogram area, then just do that quick right click or double click to lock it in there. The other thing we didn't do is in fact here we'll zoom out a little bit. We didn't talk about selective color. So selective color I often kind of loop in with borders as something that I don't do unless there's really a good cause for it. But if we go to our selective adjustments, and we'll put one more control point out here, and let's pop it right here. I don't know if the castle is a great place to do it here. We'll put it in the sky for right now. The bottom element on this is called selective colorization, or just SC for short. And as you slide across it, you'll notice that everything within the area of that control point now has color. So if we wanted to make the sky blue with the rest of the image black and white, we could do that. In fact, we can drag it around. If we wanted to make the castle colorful, we could, but the problem is the castle doesn't really have color to start with, so it makes a little odd in this type of image. Sometimes it can make sense in certain types of images. Like I used it in a picture of a butterfly on a rock, so the butterfly kept its color, everything else went into black and white, so we just kind of amped up the texture. You can see it has an interesting effect here in the grass. Because we have done so much to adjust the other colors and brightness, our grass isn't really green anymore. So by turning on the selective color, we have this kind of weird psychedelic puke color. It's a little bit like bile or stomach acid. But you can see as it goes in. And this is one where you drop it will impact which color tones are coming through. So you see right now it's kind of more yellow. If I click on that and I move it to one of these thicker blades that's got more green in it, you see the green comes through. So it really comes down to where that crosshatch is placed, which is a great reason why you might want to do that double click to lock it in. And then you're moving around until you get on the right one. So we can look at this blade of grass, and That's a crazy yellow one. And if we move it over here, we're back into some of the greens. So, you know, play with it if you want to. I think there's certainly a time and a place for it, so I wouldn't go away from it. It is very easy to do it here. I think it's a lot easier than trying to do it via a mask in Photoshop sometimes. But it really is going to depend on the image, because a mask will give you much more control if you have something that's got very fine-tuned and intricate edges to it. This one really is limiting you based on the pixels, the color of the pixels that you drop that little crossbar on, and where the borders of the circle is, because like we can make this really big, and it would pull in a lot more of the grass, a lot more of those green tones. But it's not giving us the ability to go in and do a fine edge around all of the little bits. So let me go ahead and delete that control point. So I'm fairly happy with it. I'm going to hit OK. You'll do notice that down here at the bottom that in addition to OK, we have the ability to hit brush. And so if we hit brush, this would take us back into Photoshop in masking mode. And so we'd have the normal image, and then only the parts that we revealed through the mask would come through to look like this. So that might be something that's good to do if you did want to play with selective colorization and it had a finer edge. You might be able to use this to kind of compare them together if you wanted to mask that way instead of with the traditional Photoshop things. Okay, so there we go. We have gone from flat and kind of dull green yucky looking to kind of vivid psychedelic blue and oversaturated grass to a nice high contrast, high structure black and white image of a funky falling down castle in Ireland. So hopefully this gives you an idea what some of those features you might not have played with before really do in there. And I would say just go in and play with it, and you know, go ahead and take the time to put a lot of effort into cleaning up your image before you ever go in there, because you'll see I do have to come out here now and fix my stupid sensor problem that I didn't fix before. In fact, here, we'll go ahead and do that. There we go. So that one at least cleaned up fairly easy. But there you go. If you have any questions, post in the community, let me know, and I will be happy to come back in and try and do a little more to answer them for you.